Okay, today we're taking a stroll down near the River Thet. A few ducks on the river today, things like that. It's a beautiful day, it's an exaggeration. It's a windy and wet day, but all days. I think it was Jesse James was supposed to have, when asked, what a nice day is, famously said, any day spent above ground. And when you've reached 69, it's still relatively okay. I kind of appreciate that sentiment. So good days are the ones who survive. It's been rather lovely actually this year, although we've had a few cold snaps and things like that. It's been beautifully clear, and some of the warm days of February have been actually quite pleasant. This may be down to global warming or just some kind of factor that's particular to this year, this set of conditions. The whole science of predicting climate or weather, weather is known beyond about 5 days. They cannot really predict much about the weather at all, other than the grossest of generalities. If you look at a BBC website, look at the weather, they'll happily be predicting the days up to about 14-15 days hence, when they theoretically know what it's going to do, but they don't. If you ever test that, you'll find that it's woefully inaccurate when you actually get to the days, unless you've got a very sort of long settled period or a very long, like sunshine or particularly windy period where it's typical for that time of year. They've got some chance of being correct, but really it's not much better than 50-50, if that. So very unpredictable, as is climate, as climate's proven to be. A lot of the global warming predictions have proven to be totally incorrect. There is an interesting site which basically lists all predictions made by scientists and politicians during the last 3 decades, and then analyses them for accuracy. I think there were about 120, 130 predictions listed, and only 1 or 2 come anywhere close to have been realised. There's the classics: the snows on Kilimanjaro will disappear, they're still there. Polar bears will be extinct, they're not only not extinct, there's far more of them. Deserts will cover the surface of the earth, no less deserts now, far more greenification, and so on and so forth. In particular, there was a famous US politician, Al Gore, who did a film, The Inconvenient Truth, and made a large fortune out of lecturing on the subject. And I think of the predictions he made, he had a perfect score. He got nothing right, absolutely zero. And yet he's still listened to this day. He's still held up as a respectable prognosticator. He's still listened to it WEF. He still has influence. Why? If someone had got any other walk of life any other walk of life been so spectacularly wrong so often, you would wonder if their credentials were worth anything at all. So climate change, a lot of it is based on data which is extremely variable and extremely hard to pin down, and data that's reliant on other data, and they move in relationship and move out of relationship. At some stage one set of data becomes a dominant factor, and another stage another, and it's just such a difficult thing to model, hence they get it wrong just about all the time. Even the IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change at the UN, have downgraded their predictions now. From at one time they were telling us it was going to be 4% warmer by the end of this century, still a long way off, and now they're going for somewhere between 1.5 and 2. Well, 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, it's got its problems, but it's literally not the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. In the last 150 years or so, temperature's gone up 1.2 degrees centigrade. This is not drastic at all. And still amongst that, we've had some of the coldest winters we've ever known, and ever recorded. Of course, recording doesn't go back that far, so we have to use proxies, things that stand in place of accurate data collection, and it can be quite good, quite useful, but they are a little more general, of course, because they're not the thing itself that's being measured. So you have this problem where the data doesn't really match. It's not very predictable. So what data scientists have done a lot of the time is torture the data, and they tortured it to the point where it's basically streaming. There's a famous case called ClimateGate, which if you look it up now, you'll see more sites kind of decrying that there was any scandal at all, and saying it was all a misinterpretation and all that. But essentially there were emails released from I think it's the University of Norwich, University of East Anglia in Norwich, and they were essentially talking amongst themselves about suppressing data that didn't, the data coming through didn't really match the predictions they were making. So they had to find a way of making this the case. So they were basically tagging on bits of data. There was the famous one referencing Michael Mann's trick, where he used one set of data up to a certain year and then just changed the data source. Just tacked the two together and produced a thing called the hockey stick. Complete nonsense, of course, but and basically cheating, essentially. But that's the kind of tactics that they were involved in. It's a deception, and quite a conscious deception. They wanted to give an impression of increased urgency vis-a-vis climate change, and it wasn't really working. So, because of this, they essentially falsified the data, or didn't release data that was inconvenient, didn't allow other scientists to be able to examine the data, and this was shown up and then it's been played down ever since. About 2 decades ago now, it's been played down ever since. So essentially there's a lot of interest, shall we say, a lot of reasons for people to keep the narrative going, and hence you will only generally hear one side of the narrative. The other side of the narrative, there's many aspects to the other side of the narrative, but one way of looking at it is that climate change is always happening anyway, but the kind of level of climate change they're talking about, 1 to 2 degrees warmer over the course of a couple of hundred years, is not really such a bad thing. There's many aspects that they're actually quite positive. The greening of the planet I referred to once before, the 15% increase in greenification observed by NASA satellites over the last 2 decades. The amount of food that can be grown, how good it is for the habitats of local animals, the chance to proliferate, all that sort of thing. Many kind of positives to be able to grow more food, actually. Also, the seasons are getting slightly changed. I live in the UK, and here the autumn goes on a lot longer and spring starts a bit earlier, so it means that the effective time when you can grow vegetables and fruit, as I do, is longer, which is a good thing. Far fewer people are dying of cold than was the case previously. UK in particular, it's now around about 500,000 people have escaped premature deaths because of the slight warming that's gone on. As I stated last week, the threat from climate for most people is cold. It's not warm. 4 out of 5 people die due to climatic conditions die because of the cold. So getting slightly warmer is likely to help that situation. As the ice caps and things roll back, and places like Greenland become slightly less ice covered, proliferates the chances to find more fuel. You know, the fuel that we need to keep our homes warm, keep our cars going, keep our industry going, keep our economies going. The fuels that are so decried by the green lobby. The green lobby seems to simply come down to almost like a hatred of humans. They don't want to find an answer to this problem. The problem is they want us basically to go back and track, and in order to do so, they attack even the most basic level of survival, like what we can eat. No meat apparently, because meat cows produce methane, that sort of thing. They don't want us to cook on gas cookers anymore. The easiest, simplest, cheapest way to cook. No, that's not good apparently. Obviously don't want us to run our cars. They don't want us to heat our houses. And essentially they want us to sacrifice, they don't really mind sacrificing what literally millions of people could be for an idea that may be unfounded anyway. Even ruining whole economies. There's a projection of the US Congress at the moment. They're trying to work out how much net zero will cost US taxpayers, the US government, same thing effectively, by the year 2050 and going to net zero. The estimate is around about $50 trillion. Now, trillion is a very big number. So to get there, I think it's 50. Crazy. 50 followed by 12 noughts. And that too have an effect that they can't even estimate when asked what effect that would have if other countries didn't go along with it, like China and India, i.e. the ones who are doing most carbon producing. They asked them to estimate what kind of difference that would make after spending all that money to the temperature. And originally they didn't want to come out with any estimate, and then some statistician worked it out that at most it would be, I think, 0.03 of 1%. This is not, not particularly impressive after all that effort. Now, I mean, this debate is always a complex one, and as ever with these debates, you're told that unless you've got a sort of degree in climatology and another one in weather systems and another one in this and another one in that, you should have no opinion. But that is not a very sensible way to carry forward any debate. And I think we need more contributions from a diverse range of views, and even some people supporting it as a relatively sensible, reasonable kind of way forward. Not just the idea that climate change is wrong, the temperature rise, any temperature rise automatically wrong. There are benefits. I think we need to be a little more, or have a little more humility in our approach to these things. It's extremely difficult to predict, extremely difficult to gather data, and the implications of those data are sort of multivariate. They all influence each other in various ways, and the net effect, to say the net effect is either good or bad, is not something that's easily arrived at. So a little more humility, saying this may be happening. We have some data that says it could be happening, some data that says it may not be as bad as that. As bad if you think it's bad. On the other hand, people need to argue, actually, well, it's not no great shakes, we're actually going quite fine. There's no need to make all these adjustments, no need to impoverish people, put them into positions where they can't heat their house. And a final point on that, I noticed, I looked up a chart, basically, about the price of natural gas, and was amazed to see that it's at its lowest point that it's been for, well, a good few years. UK apparently is absolutely awash with the stuff. In fact, so much so that we're pumping it to Europe to subsidise them. We've got so much that we can't actually store it. Yet, we're paying greater amounts for our gas we're using in heating and cooking than ever before. Those two phenomena do not seem easily matched. How come it's so incredibly cheap to buy the stuff now, and yet we're being charged such an amazingly high rate for it? And I noticed Centrica announced their profits the other day and were hugely up in the billions. So, it's not rocket science that you can work out if they're buying the underlying commodity at a very cheap price and charging a hugely expensive price. Obviously, there's a nice profit to be creamed there. But I think I'll leave it at that. I mean, there's all sorts of implications going on from there, but we'll leave it at that for now and do another chat next week. Apologies for my slightly altered voice this week. I have got a cold. It's been with me about a week. Ironically, since the podcast about cold showers. And hopefully we'll be back with some more next Friday. Till then, subscribe, like, all the usual thing. And any thoughts and comments, more than happy to have a look at them. Thank you very much.